Okay, class, we're back. Last time we were looking at this right here and seeing the conducting zone and respiratory zone. So we go here just to bring it up again. We have what we call the respiratory zone, and that's the site of gas exchange. You can see over here, which is in my PowerPoint. And then we have the conducting zone, which would basically all the way here, which is, like I say, is the similarity that you had with the blood vessels. Respiratory zone would kind of be like the capillaries. Okay? So we go further. Here's our respiratory system that we talked about. You see right there, nose and mouth all the way down to pharynx, larynx, trachea, lungs, and so forth. And so once we got here, we're into the lung area right there. See, we're into the lung area, which is not shown here, but we will be looking at it as we go along. All right? So we're going to start our journey of air first with the nose. Start our journey of air first with the nose. Now, this particular here that you can print out or just glance at, I'm not going to get real detailed. This comes from a histology text. And what this does is to show you as you go down, I'm gonna do this here. It shows you as you go down. I'll make it smaller so you can see the full thing. The different types of epithelium and so forth that you would see as you go down. That's the first one. Here's the second one. And so you can see, I took that from histology. So you can glance at that. You could print it out or glance at it as we go down, looking at the changes in the epithelium. Remember, the whole thing is we're trying to thin everything down. Remember that when I showed you this? We're trying to thin everything down. We're looking at a pseudostratified, ciliated columnar epithelium all the way down to a simple squamous in the alveolus. And gradually as you go down through the conducting zone, see, that's where the whole thing comes in. The whole thing comes in is that as you start coming down from the conducting zone, the epithelium starts to get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner until you get able to get good gas exchange. And we'll be looking at that. All right. Let's go a little step further then. All right, where are we now? All right, we'll come back up here. So now we're looking at, you know, when you go to the doctor and they say you have an upper respiratory infection, you know, if you have a cold or whatever. So this is what we're looking at. The upper respiratory tract consists of the nasal nose, the pharynx, and the larynx. So other words, up to here. Up to here would be, so if you have laryngitis, you would still have an upper respiratory, okay? So then the lower respiratory would be from that trachea all the way down to the bottom, all the way down to the bottom. So that's what we're looking at there. Upper respiratory system, upper respiratory, nose and mouth, all the way down to the larynx, to the end of the larynx, and then, okay, all right? We're okay there. So here's a little picture of that to show you. Here's a little picture, upper respiratory, lower respiratory. All right, let's go further. Let's see what comes up. All right, major functions of the respiratory system. What are they? To supply the body with oxygen and dispose of carbon dioxide. You already pretty much know that. Respiration, four distinct processes. Okay. Pulmonary ventilation is moving air in and out of the lungs. Now, I'm going to see if I can find Respiratory 2 PowerPoint. I think. Let me see what I see here on a Respiratory 2 PowerPoint. And if I do, then I think it's taking a while here to get that. If I see that, then I can kind of give you an idea of that particular aspect there. Let me see if I can find that real quick here. Okay, I'll do Respiratory 2, which you'd be looking at anyway eventually. And I'm going to see what we got there. All right. So, yeah, okay. So I'm going to push this over here and use this for right now. Then I'll Shrink it down. All right. So 4 distinct processes. Pulmonary ventilation is moving air in and out of the lungs. So that would be you bringing oxygen and so forth in and CO2 out. That's pulmonary ventilation. External respiration is gas exchange between the lungs and the blood. Remember, the bloodstream comes in. Remember, now go back to your cardio. Remember, this right here, symbolic, would be going to the lungs from the heart. So this would be the pulmonary artery. Symbolic. Pulmonary artery, see, it's coming from that right side of the heart. Pulmonary artery. And then this would be the pulmonary vein. So in other words, external respiration is that gas work in the lungs right here. All right. That's why I'm glad I did pull this slide up. All right. Transport. See, once you put that oxygen in there, you transport it, go into the left side and go around the body, lose it. Okay, so I'm transporting. Then internal respiration is at the tissue cell level. That's where you're exchanging the O2 with tissue cells and picking up O2 to bring it back around. So again, the 4 things are pulmonary ventilation, in and out of the lungs, external respiration, CO2 into lungs, O2 out of lungs, gas exchange between the lungs and the blood, transport around, and then deliver in the tissues, deliver O2 and pick up CO2. All right, see what comes up next. So now we're to the nose. Shrink this down a little bit. So now we're looking at the nose, okay? The job of the nose is to warm, filter, and moisten the air. It also is involved with smell. Air initially enters the nose in a laminar flow. Now see, this is where you go back, because remember when I did the mathematics of circulation, we talked about laminar flow and turbulent. Air initially enters the nose in laminar flow. You bring it in through your nostrils. Thus, only the columns of air are the outer rim. See, in order for the air to get filtered, and think about how laminar is. You bring in a solid column of air, but it's in laminations. The outer rim of air would touch the side wall of the nose, where the hairs are in the mucous membrane. But the inner areas would not do that. So they would go undisturbed back into your pharynx with dust and everything else. See, only the side thing. So laminar flow in the nose is not real good. See, unlike in the blood vessels, it's good, but in the nose, it's not. We need all the air to try to hit that sidewall. So the air must be converted, the air in the nose must be converted to turbulent flow in order for most air to touch the mucus latent nasal sidewalls to be filtered. When we get further in the anatomy, we're going to see the concha, which are nicknamed the turbinates. Why? Because they change the air to turbulent flow, cause the nasal air to convert from laminar flow to turbulent flow. We'll be looking for that. Now, the smell receptors are in the superior aspect of the nasal cavity right before you enter the nasal pharynx. So in other words, good spot to have it, because you can't enter the pharynx unless you go through the top part of the nose. Now, here's the problem. If you have nasal congestion, or if you have a whole bunch of mucus, that mucus could cover up what? That area. So then the air would go straight back into the pharynx and never go over the smell area we'll see in anatomy. Now, so your smell would be thrown off. Now, in the brain, the smell center, which is called olfaction center, and the taste center, which is called the gustatory center, have some commonality and connection. So that's why when your smell is off, what? Your taste is also off. All right. So now we go to anatomy of the nose. This is the external anatomy of the nose that you can see. So I'd like for you to kind of learn that. Here's the root of the nose. Here's the dorsum of the nose. That little tip is your apex. These are the ala nasi. So in other words, if you are having trouble breathing and you just kind of trying to open that nostril, then we'll say you have flaring of the ali nasi. Flaring of the ali nasi. So this is the root or bridge of the nose. See underneath, we'll see in a moment, that's the nasal bone. But here, all this is cartilage. All this is a fibrocartilage, what you see of your nose. Here, of course, are the nostrils, also called the nares, also called the external choanine. So there's a couple of names for that. All right, so that's your nose. All right, now, that's the nose from the outside. You can learn those structures. Here's the nose from the inside. See, here's that nasal bone, but all this is cartilage. That's fibrocartilage right there, fibrocartilage. Okay, let's go a little further. Now I'm going to the skull. Here's the nasal bone. Now what I'm looking at is the bony nasal septum. Now let me explain what I mean. You have a bony nasal septum and a fibrocartilaginous nasal septum, a bony nasal septum. So if you take your hand right now and squeeze inside your nose, you're feeling the fibrocartilaginous nasal septum. It is connected to the bony nasal septum back here. Okay? If you had nasal septal deviation, where one side was deviated more than on the other side, the plastic surgeon or otolaryngologist, ENT guy, would have to mess with the bone in order to get everything going. All right? So when we look at the bones, I'm going to say this, so we'd have to take this off. I'm going to say the superior aspect of the bony nasal septum is what we call the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. Right here is an independent bone called right here is still the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid, that portion there. And then right here is the vomer. And then you have a little bit coming off the maxilla and palatine. The maxilla and palatine. Let's go here real quick. See right here, right there. See that area right there? Okay. I'm coming here. Right there. That's the inferior nasal concha, but oh, you can't really see it because you got stuff in the way. So the best way, I'm going to come back here, I was hoping you could, would be perpendicular plate of ethmoid, vomer, and then some input from the maxilla and palatine bone. See right here, that's the palatine bone, and it gives off a little bit. And here's the maxilla giving off a little bit right there. And see right here, I can show you this. See this area right here? That's that perpendicular plate of the ethmoid coming off of right here. That's part of that deal there. There's that ethmoid bone there. Right there. Middle nasal concha, but it's hard for me to get behind that there. Okay. Anyway, but you can look at it from this picture here and get an idea. So you got the ethmoid bone involved and an independent bone called the vomer and a little bit of the processes off the palatine and maxilla. All right. Now, this is you going up into the nose. See those hairs there? Those hairs there are nasal hairs, but they can also be called vibrissae. They can also, I'm going to put that term, they can also be called vibrissae up in that area there, the vibrissae. So that's another name for the nasal hairs, vibrissae. Okay, vibrissae. And that would be those nasal hairs there. We'll put a little line there, if you don't mind. That could do that there. Put a little line there. And so that would be these nasal hairs right there, let's say. Okay. All right. So where we are now, we're just kind of building this along. Okay, so we talked about the external part. Okay, so now we're going, now here is, it's a mucous membrane, and that's that right there. It's a mucous membrane, and the cells secrete mucin. So I'm going to start right here. Tell you what, we're going to start right here again at the nose. This is going to be my nose too. And then we'll move a little quicker on this next one, I think.